Right, so Rishi Sunak has come out of the local elections looking weaker than he ever has before. There's rumours circulating that an influx of letters of no confidence are winging their way to the 1922 committee. So here we go again, folks. Could we have a new leadership contest in the offing this side of a general election? As it seems, the Tories once more are determined to eat themselves as they descend into further factional infighting. Just goes to show how unstable the entire circus has now become, doesn't it? Where before they were all unified by mutual greed, now it's all about control. It's all about making Brexit work. The question of Europe still destroying the party from within, and although you love to see it, the effect this has on the country, the damage caused to ordinary people's lives through incomes, supply and demand, inflation staying high, interest rate rises, wage squeezes, it's all one big fat mess of the Tories' own making. So sympathy be damned, they brought it on themselves. But how much worse can it get for Sunak at this point? Well, his 5 pledges to the country that he said he wanted to be judged on, well, he can be rest assured he absolutely will be, because if he doesn't deliver, the game is up. And that's not just my words on the matter, that's the opinion of a chap called Martin Baxter. Who he then, Damo? Well, he's the CEO of polling trend spotting company and amalgamator Electoral Calculus, who says he's identified a narrow path to victory for Sunak and Co. But it's all down to delivering on those 5 promises of his and whittling Labour's lead down further. Well, as much as Sunak might have thought some of his pledges were safe bets, that would look after themselves, quite honestly, eating into Labour's lead is more in keeping with that kind of thinking. Keir Starmer haemorrhaging his own lead by being Keir Starmer is pretty much delivering that for him. The chances of a majority Labour government continuing to evaporate as their lead drops to 9%. And if it goes south of 5%, according to Baxter, the Tories are in with a shout at holding on to power. But it does depend on Sunak delivering on something he says he's going to, because so far, other than the Windsor Framework deal he concocted to ease EU trade and trade with Northern Ireland, his track record thus far has been completely unremarkable policy-wise, delivering for the country-wise, still playing mop-up to previous Tory balls-ups under Johnson and Truss, whilst ducking his head every 5 minutes when he or his wife are found to have some sort of financial link to some business or other that's getting government contracts or benefiting from them. So his pledges, do you remember them? Likely as not, it's not exactly memorable stuff, but he nailed his colours to them, so they do matter insofar as that is concerned. He promised to get inflation down by half this year compared to last year to ease the cost of living. He pledged to get the economy growing, create better paid jobs. He pledged to get the national debt falling, that old chestnut again, been circulating since the days of George Osborne, cutting NHS waiting lists and passing laws to stop the small boat crossings. Having had your memory refreshed now, you can see just what a pile of donkey doo-doo he's really in if he's hoping to turn his fortunes around. He cannot and will not achieve them. Whether the media spin it into a success for him also isn't assured, as the smell of Starmer is beginning to be a more appealing stink in billionaire press baron nostrils right now. A change of face, though not a change of politics, is what the status quo need. The Tories arguably becoming more of a liability as the days and weeks pass by. Let's start with the inflation story, though. It's remaining stubbornly high. Interest rates have just been hiked again to try and get it down. 11th attempt by the Bank of England in 18 months to do so by doing the same thing over and over again. So we know it doesn't work because it hasn't up till now. Because all it does is send our bills up, our costs up as our incomes remain too low. And when inflation is being driven not by demand but by supply issues and corporate profiteering going inadequately taxed, you can see the Tories are never going to address that particular issue in any way that will fix it. Sunak has also only given himself until the end of this year to do so, not even to the next election. So he'll fail this one faster than anything else. And Chancellor Jeremy Hunt has warned that this target may be missed just yesterday. Even if Sunak achieved it, of course, though, we still wouldn't necessarily feel better off because prices would still be 5% higher than they were a year ago. He's only promising to have them after all. When the whole point of this is to ease the cost of living crisis, currently he's overseeing the complete reverse. Better paid jobs. Well, some corporate ones somewhere might get created, and the media might spin that as some kind of overarching massive success for a very, very limited few, but they won't be where they're needed. Rail strikes are on again. Hugh Merriman was getting the treatment from Naga Munchetty on BBC Breakfast over the 4% pay rise offer when inflation is at 10%. There's no such thing as a better paid job. Even if Sunak got that inflation down by half, it's still a real terms pay cut. Thanks to high inflation, that pay rise is less than 10% because it is in real terms a pay cut. Inflation must be dealt with first if Sunak is to have any chance of pulling off the rest of his pledges. Yet here we see a government minister again keeping wages down. Nonsense. And this pledge is more insulting, I think, than the rest, because they're nowhere near achieving it when they're more intent on going to war with ordinary working class people, going on strike for their livelihoods, the running of the country in their interests, and helping them play a part in the successful running of this country. It's making a bad problem he's already identified even worse, whilst claiming he will fix it. It's like sending a mechanic to do brain surgery with one arm tied behind his back. That's the reality of Tory claims to be improving pay. Get the national debt falling, that on again. It's utter bollocks. We've always had a national debt. When we borrow from ourselves, it's just more Tory speak to cut spending in actuality. Achieving this pledge actually isn't in our interest. And when there's literally a cost of living crisis, poor wages, high inflation, it's all intertwined like a big ball of wool. It's like you've asked a litter of kittens to untangle it for you, and 10 minutes later you've got several small cats hog-tied to each other. That's the only time I'm going to compare Sunak and his cabinet to something soft, cute and cuddly, though. We think of debt in terms of personal debt, but national debt, when we borrow from ourselves, isn't functionally a debt at all. We're borrowing from ourselves. How can it be? What they call the national debt amounts to the grand total of all the cash that's been printed and struck and is in circulation, plus national savings and investments, plus national bonds, which is capital we buy and sell. There is no debt. If we eliminated it, we'd have no economy, our banks would collapse, and we would have no cash. Reducing it means reducing all of those things. Still sound good? No, it's nonsense. The cutting NHS waiting lists won't happen when staff are striking over unsafe working conditions and staffing levels. We're back to that side of things again, like the rail dispute. And the Sunak government response is to take them to court to block them from striking for one day, as they did at the start of this month. Absolutely insane, gets us absolutely nowhere. And lastly, the small boat crossings being dealt with by passing a bill rendering all asylum seekers illegal, which is certain to fall afoul of the Human Rights Act, will be rendered illegal, therefore, internationally, and simply isn't going to fly, much like those flights to Rwanda. They are also sickening to people across the political divide, and frankly, even if he did achieve this, it would win him precious few plaudits amongst voters, save the ones who have to pick their hands up every time they cross a doorstep. He could, of course, just open up safe legal routes to asylum to achieve that pledge overnight, but he'd be cast out on his ear by his own rancid party just as quickly if he dared to do so. And Sunak is weak and will not dare to do so. So his pledges will fail, as you can see. But again, if it gets perceived by the press, twisted somehow into a win somewhere, or if Sunak can pull the wool over enough people's eyes, he might squeak it. Unless you are genuinely financially better off, can you get a GP appointment, can get flights to Rwanda taken off with no more boats crossing the channel and aren't taking out a second mortgage just to do the food shopping each week. You'd have to be pretty blind and stupid to get sucked in by any such narratives as that. But hey, enough people keep voting Tory, don't they? So let's never underestimate the propensity for stupidity in the UK. Now, I don't know what polling Electoral Calculus have seen to make such a judgment as they've done here. I'm thinking that because they're still predicting a big fat Labour majority right now, 409 seats for Labour still currently. Bonkers, frankly. I don't believe it'll be that high for a moment. So I'm just wondering if this is all a little bit of realistic expectation management coming out from them. I'd like to see what polling backs up what they're saying here. I've not found any. It smacks of opinion. And when pollsters are supposed to deal in facts and figures, it does lend weight to that old adage that polls are there to influence thinking rather than to inform. If Sunak fails on these promises, and more importantly, is seen to have failed on them, then he's just reminded people you can't take his word for anything. And why would you believe a word he says about what he'd do if returned to power? It'd damage his credibility heavily. Of course, Keir Starmer has given Sunak years' worth of his lies, deceit and dishonesty to cast doubt on his integrity, and whether he'd keep his word in power too. But after 13 years, although I think it'll certainly erode into Labour's current polling lead, or wherever they are by the time of the general election, given how dirty Starmer played with attack ads going into the recent local elections, you can expect Sunak to revisit that on him tenfold, because it's what Tories do. And frankly, he'll have asked for it. I think that's an issue the Tories will go into an election heavily on. Culture wars now, personal attacks later. I think Electoral Calculus have not thought about that, how low Tories can and will go. As I said, I don't know, you could measure it in a poll, really. But as I said, thinking they've presented a counter-argument to limit expectation here is what I think they've done, based on their own current polling of political parties. I don't think they quite believe it themselves. I think Sunak and the Tories are done for as things stand. I can't see the press swinging behind him as he will need them to do, but neither do I think Labour will win a majority. I think it'd be as bad for the country if they won a majority as if the Tories did. But that's a guessing game right now, and that's my opinion. This might be Sunak's slim victory to power in the views of Electoral Calculus, but it's wafer thin, and I don't think he's going to pull it off. Besides, you know I'll shred any media nonsense saying otherwise. It's what I'm here for. Thanks for watching. If you appreciated this video, please do hit like and subscribe. Leave a comment and hit the notification bell too so you don't miss the next one. Also look out for me on social media and other interesting stuff by clicking on the Linktree link in the comments below. And I will see you next time. Cheers, folks.